starting. Oh, I saw it go. Now it's going to start. Okay.
Yeah, I also just tried it. I don't know if we both have to click that.
Oh, it's no. It says Christian is recording. That's good. Okay, we're on.
Okay.
All right. So, the first thing to start about is that there are two Buddhisms. There are two, but they are not Buddhisms in the sense of the way that we think in the location. In the sense, I'm not talking about Vajrayana and Zen and Mahayana and Theravada and all of that, but rather I'm talking about the distinction between beginners and nobles. Those who understand the teachings of the Buddha and understand the Buddha Dhamma, and then those who do not really understand the Buddha and the teachings of the Buddha, but they adhere to what they think is that. And I will give that the name of Buddhist religion. So we now have the teaching of the Buddha or the Buddha Dhamma, and also as opposed to that, we have the Buddhist religion. In most countries, it's always that there are a very few small number of nobles, probably around 5% or so, or maybe less. And then the rest of the people, more than 90% of them, will think that they are Buddhist, and in fact, they really do not know the teachings of the Buddha at all. What they do know instead is a mixture of what the teachings of the Buddha were in an ordinary kind of sense, mixed with religion, mostly the religion of India. But in Thailand, they had an ancient animism, and in Tibet, there was a religion before Tibet, and in Japan, there was a Shinto. So when Buddhism went to Japan, the people who were already there, except for maybe one monk or two who were noble who went to Japan, everybody else is Shinto. How are they going to become Buddhist? The answer is many of them are not, especially when they tell each other what the teachings of the Buddha was without really knowing. And so the danger is, and this really happened in the time of Ashoka. In fact, this is where it began, was when, because of royal patronage, so many people joined the monkhood of the Buddha because King Ashoka was providing housing, food, open stuff, lots of easy robes, medical attention. And so many people took on the robes of the monk just to get the benefits of being the monk, which then meant that a whole lot of people who really didn't know the Dhamma had come into the Sangha all at one time, and there weren't enough teachers to go around, especially when the right kind of teaching is done in very, very small groups. Maybe the largest in the group there would be 5 or 6 people. Now that's getting to be a really good meditation group. But 25, that's typical. 100, sorry, it's really difficult to teach the Dhamma to 100 people. The best you can do is pick one person out of that group of 100 and teach the Dhamma to them, and hope for the 99 to get whatever they can out of it. And so this is the way that the Dhamma should be taught, and it should be taught in a natural way, not an organized way. But when you have a lot of students, we wind up trying to organize it so we can teach everybody this, and then everybody that. So they're in first grade, and then they're in second grade, and then they're in third grade as a group as they go along. But that doesn't work for people who have done Dhamma on their own already. That everyone that I've seen generally is ready for an actual teacher. It's a one-to-one relationship so that the teacher can watch the student, make sure that they're nodding their head right and not getting confused, etc., like this.
That's actually a bit strange then about the Goenka retreats. As a side note, I think must be really hard to teach many people like that, even if it's a good technique.
Exactly so. So when you have a large group of people in a retreat, you have to teach to a certain group or mentality. And the way that Goenka started teaching then has become stylized and formalized, even though he started doing that way back in the 1950s. And by 1975 or 78 or so, got Dhammagiri. And been teaching exactly that same way. And in fact, he died in about 3 years ago, September. And now the only thing are the tapes, which means now it's really solidified. Even though what he's teaching is correct, the student body is changing, but the retreat remains the same. Not only that, but the retreat remains the same, group after group after group. And mostly those retreats are designed for beginners, but dedicated beginners. So the second time you take a retreat, it may be better for you, but it's still going to be the same retreat as the way it's taught. So the students change when they do retreat after retreat, but the retreats themselves are best kept as exactly the way that they were. And that's really true when the teaching winds up being a video machine or a DVD or something. Then we're locked too much into it. So back to Asok, what happened then was that many of the new monks never got the right education. And because of that, Buddhism then became more and more and more polluted with the beliefs of the monks who didn't get a good education. So always there has been a large cadre of monks who really do not understand the teaching of the Buddha, but the way that they have been operating is when a student begins to ask the right questions, and he's asking the right questions to the right teacher, then the door is open. Yeah. And the student is let in on the really noble Dhamma. Now, the noble Dhamma by itself is normally very dangerous. To let that out in public is to invite enemies. Because the real teaching of the Buddha is saying, for instance, to give up religion. That if anything, the teaching of the Buddha is a rebellion against religious systems, which means that when the real Dhamma gets out, then it becomes immediately under attack. But the Buddhist religion can somehow slide in with the other religions. And those other religions have no clue that the actual religion of Buddhism has a poison pill in it that destroys religion. So now that you know that that's what's going on, you can understand that many of the teachings of the Buddha are not actually teachings of the Buddha in a normal way, but they're in the ordinary way. And a lot of stuff has been mixed from Brahmanism and from animism, and a lot of stuff has been made up. Yeah. For instance, all of the heavens and all of the hell realms and all of that stuff, the Buddha never actually talked about that stuff other than as a joke. He made a joke out of it. But it's hard to see jokes when you're reading literature literally, and people coming out of Christianity, they try to read the Bible literally, and then they come to the Buddhist literature reading that literally, and they don't recognize the Buddha joking here. This is a metaphor, or better still, this is a royal laugh. And so they believe that the Buddha taught about the Tusita heavens or the Indira or all of that stuff, when in fact he's making a joke about it.
Isn't there even stuff like when the Buddha just got enlightened that some Brahman god came down to convince him to teach? And I think I read something like that in the...
Yeah, but who is the Brahman god? It's just a part of his own personality.
Yeah.
There is no really Brahman gods. If there were, you would have seen one by now.
Maybe, yeah.
There are no angels. If there were, you would have seen one by now, or at least they would have manifest. No, there's an entire system of magic. There is a magical world of magical beliefs. And the teaching of the Buddha is to help us to get out of that magical world, out of that magical belief system. But in order to do that, one has to go through, or basically brings their own magical belief systems with them, and eventually they got to let them off at the door. And so that's something that Achan Po and I have made very straight with each other, that we're teaching here on this internet, on the Skype, only the supramundane Dhamma, only the noble Dhamma. We do not teach it in the beginning way of it being a religion. In that regard, an example would be, about the precepts. Okay. Panati pata vedramani sakabadam samati ami atanandana vedramani sakabadam samati ami. And then there's kame suchachara vedramani sakabadam samati ami wasawata vedramani sakabadam. You've heard these things before. I stopped at that one. I'm not going to do Suramaria. Macha pamatadana vedramani sakabadam samati ami, because that's not in the Eightfold Noble Path. Only the first right speech and right action. But right booze drinking is not part of the Eightfold Noble Path. That's part of the precepts. That was added by the religious. That was added by the what I call the church ladies of Buddhism.
So you're saying you can even be a good Buddhist even though you drink sometimes?
I'm saying that drinking is irrelevant to what we're doing, but getting drunk is a problem. It's a problem in society. DUIs, operating mechanical equipment, all kinds of things can get one killed if you're not watching what you're doing. Therefore, if you're drinking something that's going to make you heedless, that's a very stupid thing to do, and you do not need the Buddha to tell you that.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And it's not a rule, because there are no rules. The religion set up rules. The precepts are not rules. They're precepts. And those precepts are still set up for the religious Buddhists, the beginners.
And
the nobles don't keep precepts.
In Plum Village, they call them mindfulness trainings, the precepts, because it's things to attend to in order to stay aware of what you're doing.
But the Buddha does not talk about it that like in the correct way of looking at the Eightfold Noble Path, that once the mind is noble, once you have right view, right attitude, right mindfulness, and right effort, then that right noble mind becomes unified and collected together as a unity, because you're following the path. And because you have a noble mind that's full of integrity, honor, high class. This is a very high class way of looking at it. Not a magical, not a religious, not a way out there or a supernatural, but rather a very real life world above that world, supramundane way of looking at it, of not being involved in the world, because the mind is now noble, it's pure. And because of that, we don't need it as precepts, and the Buddha never gave it as precepts. He said in the sense that right action is right action when it's done naturally by one who has a mind that's noble. So in the Buddhist religion, it's a mindfulness practice. In the Buddhist dispensation, it's actually a natural outcome of practicing correctly.
Okay.
So everything about teaching of the Buddha and the Buddhist religion, it might be all the same literature, but everything, and especially the attitude about it, is upside down.
Yeah, there's so many ways to go wrong in the literature, and then your own ideas come into it while reading it. That's why I realized I need someone to explain it to me in order to be able to ask questions. And
yes, so that will be then the source of our relationship. So we can put away jhanas, And we can put away with what we think are going to be the benefits of jhanas, like being able to see past lives, because we're not interested in past lives. People who are interested in the past and the future are the religious people. What the Buddha's teaching is all about is this present moment. He called himself Tathagata, which is the word tatata, and that it basically is translated as he who is here now, the one who is gone thus, or the one who has come to this, is the way of talking about it. He never referred to himself as Buddha. He referred to himself as Tathagata, which means one who can be here now. And yet past lives, rebirth, all of that stuff is future oriented. And so that's part of the Buddhist religion. It's not part of the teachings of the Buddha. And you can see where they got that stuff from. They got it from the Brahmins. That's all really just Brahmanistic worship of the law of karma. And
So
later I'll give you a very, very detailed view of the law of karma as the way that the Buddha sees it. But it is completely different than the law of karma that the Hindus have. In fact, the Buddha's law of karma destroys the Hindu law of karma completely, just wipes it out, just destroys it, chops it in half, and makes sure it's completely obliterated it. And then he does that again to make sure.
Yeah, so then the question is how to how to develop such a noble mind and how to unify the mind. Interestingly, Chuladasa also doesn't like the word concentration, actually, I remember now, but he also talks about unification of mind.
Okay, so let's go with that. Another thing that we'd already started talking about, so we'll fill this in. Any course, like a Goenka course, or even here at Wat Suan Mok, a 10-day retreat, any of those is going to be an organized way of doing it, just like school is organized. So little kids come at the age of 6, and then they do first grade, and then 7 years old they do second grade, etc., like that. Books are written the same way. Even the sutras are arranged in an order, and that order has its own reason and rationale, but just because the data is presented in an orderly, rational way of description does not mean that it's got to be practiced that way. And yet the students in the West will take a natural system that has been put into enough structure so that it can be defined in order, and you can't sell everything at once. You've got to make point by point by point. But the point by point by point that you're making may not be step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 in a sequence of events. That in fact, the only place I know of where the Buddha is really talking about it in a chronological order is in the 7 factors of enlightenment, the Sambhojana. And in there, he's talking about the really important key word of unremitting, in the sense that you will not be able to have unremitting investigation until after you have unremitting mindfulness. Well, unremitting mindfulness is naturally a path factor. It's right there. I think in normally systems, it's like number 6, with right mindfulness, right effort, and right samadhi at the end. But in the Buddhist description, he brings, oh no, right view comes first, and then sati. First, you have the right view of what you're going to do, and then you have to remember it over and over and over again to keep doing the right thing, An example in that in regular life would be that the world is full of good advice. There's a lot of books that have good advice. Some of them talk about that that's what they are. They're books of good advice. Christianity has some good advice. Even Islam has some good advice. There's good advice from all over the place. So there's no problem with the good advice itself. It comes from everywhere. The problem is that good advice is hard to remember at that particular point in time when you need it most. Right. Just at the point in time when you need it, you don't have it. That's Murphy's Law.
Yeah.
You know Murphy's Law? It's not that anything that can go wrong will go wrong. That's only half of his law. Murphy's real law is anything that can go wrong will go wrong, and it'll go wrong at the worst possible moment. Which means that just when you need that good advice the most, that's when you don't have it. And you do the wrong thing, because the wrong thing is your habit, the way that you've always done it, rather than now taking the good advice. Why? Because we don't remember. So, good advice then is a kind of right view. But if we don't remember to that right advice, then we can't apply it. That's why right view comes first, and now sati. So sati winds up being the most important one of all, because that's the one that needs development. That's a skill to be developed, to remember and to remember and to remember and to keep coming back and keep coming back. Goenka drills his students on this. Never mind, start again. You've heard that phrase how many times? Over and over. Never mind, start again. The never mind part is to actually see that the mind has wandered away. And then start again means come back to it. Now, that never mind, start again is actually encompasses not only just the Eightfold Noble Path, but the entire teaching of the Buddha. The entire teaching of the Buddha can be put down to that one phrase that Goenka says, and that is, never mind, start again. But there's a lot of them. My favorite happens to be, don't worry, be happy. That's the entire teaching of the Buddha. Don't worry, be happy. There's another one, and that is the Buddha's one himself, dukkha, dukkha nirodha. In Pali, the entire teaching of the Buddha is summed up in just that phrase, and he says so in the sutta. I only teach one thing, both formally and now. I teach only one thing, dukkha, dukkha nirodha. Well, if you understand that, that's the code word for the Four Noble Truths. Suffering, the origin of suffering, the end of suffering, and the path leading to the end of suffering. So one of the things that students need to do is to start practicing that third noble truth, to become familiar with what it's like to be free from suffering, so that then we can begin to understand what suffering it is itself. And yet very few teachers I know of talk to the students about spending time on the third noble truth. They say, oh, you've got to develop this concentration kind of stuff first. Where in fact, that's not part of the Eightfold Noble Path, at least in the beginning parts of it. The only place that samadhi is mentioned is at the end of the path. Step number 8. That's the end of the path. It's not the beginning of the path. That noble, concentrated mind that is focused, and the word concentration is not a good, useful word to use. A better word to use is unified. Like Chuddadasa is saying, a unified mind. Well, what is a unified mind? Well, a unified mind has integrity, it's got honesty, it's got a kind of purity in the sense that it's got what it needs. It's unified. It's not missing a whole section. Nor is there an extra set of fleas or ticks sucking on it. That the unified mind doesn't have a bunch of crap laying around it. It's by itself and it's unified. And one of the qualities of a unified mind is that there is no component in that unified mind that is a built-in poison pill or something that will destroy that unified mind. So a real unified mind is collected together, and it has the quality of honesty. If we're lying, then that's just separating in our own minds ourselves between the truth and the lie that we've told. And so that's a disunity. Another example of that would be doubt. If we doubt anything, then the mind is not unified. So what we need to do to get to this unified mind is the beginning parts of the path, so that when those things are put into let us say our bag of skills, when they become part of our tool bag, our tricks, then that is what brings the mind to a state of being unified, is when we have unremitting mindfulness. And that unremitting mindfulness, which means we keep coming back. Now, a lot of people think unremitting mindfulness means it's here all the time, but that's not what unremitting means. The word unremitting means like beating a drum, and you keep beating that drum, keep beating that drum over, bang, 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 bang.
Mm.
So it's not a one note. It's not like that. It's nah with gaps in it. Okay, that's the way that we have to look at it. It becomes unremitting. So how can we bring our mindfulness up to the point where it keeps coming back and we keep remembering, and we keep remembering? That's what we're looking for, not concentration. We're not looking for jhana. You probably know the story that the Buddha did all of the jhanas and much more, a lot, before he was enlightened.
Yeah.
And it didn't work, and he knew it didn't work. And when they invited him, oh, you come be big king teacher here and teach this because you know it better than all the other students. And he said, nah, I don't want it. This is not what I'm looking for. Not austerities, not jhanas, none of that stuff. I need something else. And so he went looking for it, and while he was out doing his thing, he fell into a creek and fell down, and he realized he can't even get up. Then he realized, if I cannot get up out of this creek that I've fallen in because of the strength that I've lost, because of all of the austerities that I'm doing, then how in the world can I have the strength that I need to actually figure out the problem that I'm trying to solve? And that's when he got up and he started eating again. The story is that a milkmaid gave him rice and milk. And so he ate that, and his buddies that were there saw him eating and getting fat again, and they left him. They were disgusted with him because he wasn't practicing the austerities that they were. But in that time is the story that he says that has to do with the rose apple tree. Do you know that story on the rose apple tree?
As a child.
Yeah. As a child, he was sitting there watching the plowing ceremony that his dad was doing, and that he remembers having that first jhana. Now, something interesting that nobody really pays much attention to, and that was that there was a teacher behind him at that age. His name was Kundaya, and he's really, really well known in some circles. And that he actually was the same one who became Sotapan with the Buddha's first teaching of the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. But he was one of the 5 that abandoned Siddhartha when he went off. But he was also the one who taught Buddha that first jhana when he was a child. He also taught him the Rig Vedas, he taught him the Upanishads, all of that old Brahmin literature, which meant that when the Buddha was out doing his teaching, he had all of the text of the Brahmins, so he knew exactly how to refute what they were teaching. He knew what their literature was better than they did because all they knew was their literature. He knew what was right and what was wrong with it. And so here we look at it and we find out that he had already been practicing this stuff at the age of 12 to 14 and has the first jhana. But then he says to himself in a great insight, why have I been so afraid of the pleasure that comes from first jhana? The answer to that was because he had been with these austerity freaks who were trying to find their path through suffering. The idea was that, oh, we've got karma built up. We're going to have to get rid of this bad karma that we've got built up before we can be enlightened. Therefore, let me give myself the results of that old bad karma right now by beating the hell out of myself. And by suffering now, I will have gotten rid of the old karma. The Buddha came in and he said, wait a minute, look at this. The old karma may or may not be there, but if you're beating yourself now, this is new action that's going to give new results. It is not this new action is not the results of old action. Mm-hmm. This new action of doing these austerities is of no value in destroying old bad karma.
Well, that reminds me of Goenka talks a lot about sankharas, and that sounds a lot like karma. and he talks about dissolving
No, no, no,
Sankara.
no. We'll go into great bits of Sankara. Goenka knows about Sankara, and he speaks very, very correctly about it.
Okay.
But what you heard from him was not correct. So we'll go over what Sankara is later. Basically, Sankara is the way the mind stores the past. It's our memory system. It's our repertoire, not only of how to think and how to use language. For instance, if you have English and another language, then you have both languages stored and you can think. And if you know both languages very well, then you can think in two different languages. But all of that thinking in those languages is a different kind of Sankara than bodily Sankara. And it's a different kind of Sankara than emotional Sankara. But we'll get into that later. But meanwhile, it's not the storage of action and the results of actions. It's the storage of our emotional memories and our language and things like this. And those Sankaras can actually get built right down into the leg. So that as we're sitting there, the old Sankaras of basically, you know that if you pump up, if you're pumping iron or and two animals that are in a fight, they'll get tired. The reason that the muscle itself will get tired is because of I think it's lactate or something that happens with the breakdown of the amino acids that are giving the energy and that kind of stuff remain between the cells of the muscles, clogging the whole thing up so that the muscles cannot get the oxygen that they need. That's why they hurt. But if you let things drain out, then you after 5 or 10 minutes you can start fighting again, because enough of that stuff is out of the muscle so that you can start using them again. Well, guess what? Not all of it's going to get out. Some of it's going to get stored and kept there, and it doesn't belong there. And so after you're sitting for a while and just letting it sit, some of those amino acids say, let me out of here, let me out of here. And that's what causes the pain of the sitting for a long time. This is Sankaras. So both physiologically and from the teachings of the Buddha from Goenka, you can see that connection is there. There really is that. But that's not what we're talking about when we're talking about karma or action. So getting back to the Buddha story, the whole point that he's making is when he says that the first jhana is in fact the path. It's the first jhana. Not the second jhana, not the third jhana, not the fourth jhana. It's only the first. And if we can get into and maintain the first jhana, so that you're absolutely free from the hindrances, you're absolutely free from all of the thoughts of the past or the future, and that you're in a pleasant, beautiful state, being free from that, and you have a mind that's really sharp and focused and capable of work. That's what we mean by applied and sustained thought. Then you've got a mind that's really useful, valuable, and wholesome. And if you can maintain or get into that state often, it's to your great advantage. And if you can keep coming back to that state over and over again throughout the day, it will be greatly to your advantage. But any more concentration than that is not necessary. It's superfluous. Goes too far. It does have its advantages, and one of the advantages you can think of is a master who already understands the Dhamma completely. He still has time structure. He's got all day long. Might as well play with jhanas. I'm sitting here, got nothing else to do.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's what the value of jhanas is, a toy for the bhikkhus, not a path. It's not a path to enlightenment, it's a toy of the enlightenment. So this is a different perspective now. So let's get back to the point then. And the point is, how can we get into the first jhana? The answer is we have to follow the Eightfold Noble Path, and if we don't, we can't. The Eightfold Noble Path, this is part of the reason why he was able to put the Eightfold Noble Path together, was because he understood how jhana worked. And what you have to have, number one, is right view that you are going to clean out the mind. You are going to get the mind in a state that's joyful and fit for work and free from all of the hindrances. So you've got right view. The next thing is you have to remember to do that, to have that right view over and over and over again. This is the number one skill to be developed. Once you have that skill of sati coming back and back, but even the first time that you have that sati, because you possibly remember that you're sitting in the Goenka retreat and you're watching the breath, and then the mind wanders away. In fact, that frame, mind wandering away, that's a Goenka phrase. That means that the mind has become hindered again and it has actually wandered away from the breath. That mind may wander away for 1 second, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or even till the time that the bell rings. Or the bell can even ring and the student still hasn't gotten a moment of sati. The question is, when that mind wanders away, it can wander away because that's what we would call the normal, perhaps not the natural state of mind, but it's a normal state of mind. Everybody's mind is wandering, and very few people. So that's not the issue. The issue is when mindfulness comes and we begin to wake up. And what we do is we see that the mind has wandered away. And we don't like that because we thought that we were supposed to be watching. So the normal state of mind is when the wake-up call comes and we see what the mind is doing, we have kind of the idea of naughty child. Oh, you're a bad brain. Sometimes even in the expression is monkey mind. Monkey mind, monkey mind. Normally for the students of Goenka, monkey mind comes about day 6. What do we mean by that? Well, what it means is that for the first 5 days, the students were developing mindfulness so that when the mind would wander away on the first day, it'd stay gone a long time. So when they did recognize that the mind had wandered away, they only catch it 4, 5, 6 times, maybe 10 or 20 in that hour. But on day 6, because they keep on practicing, now they're catching it 75, 100 times in that hour. And the mindfulness is growing. But the student is looking at it from a different base. And so he says, oh no, I've been practicing 6 days and now my mind is really a wreck. Actually, this is great progress because the mind is actually, or the skill is being developed, that you can see the mind has wandered away. This is what we're looking for, is can you catch it wandering away? But when you do catch it, now we need more path factors. The first one we'll talk about is right effort. What is one's right effort? The answer I'll give you is that right effort, noble right effort, is the minimum amount of work that it takes to get the job done. Any more effort than that is not getting the job done, is taking away from it, is too much work. This is actually in Japan would be called jujitsu. Do you know what I mean by jujitsu? Have you ever heard that term?
Just that it's a martial art.
Yes, but it's the martial art of standing out of the way and let your opponent hurt himself. Say that I've got my head, I've got kind of my back against the wall, and this guy is punching me in the face. All I have to do is move my face a little bit and grab a hold of his arm and make sure that his fist really hits that wall. I'm going to help him throw his punch, but I'm going to help him miss his target.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what we mean by jujitsu, is what they mean by soft. We want to have a soft right effort. We don't want to overdo it at all. It's not a hard practice, and yet many of the Western students practice it right effort hard. So here is, in fact, the right way to do it, is that something marvelous has happened, sati. What I mean by that is before the mind had wandered away and you didn't know. Now sati has come and now the mind has wandered away and you know it. And this is the time when most students feel bad. In fact, this is the time to feel good because something nice has happened. Hello. Tam is home. This is Christian. He's in the Netherlands.
Hello. Hi.
So, you have a good day today?
Yes.
Yeah. John and Ben are out, and Toon, I don't know. I think he's down here. Okay. So this issue then of right effort takes a new quality when we see things in the right way, or begin to develop the right attitude. And the right attitude is the attitude of a winner, a can do, to where mostly Westerners, when they start with meditation or the way they live their lives, is with the attitude of a victim, the attitude of a loser, the attitude of one who needs help. And all of our society promotes that. Big religions, big governments, big business, big education always follow the formula that you need me. In fact, the school needs students, but the school teaches the students, no, the students need the school. Big business needs you as a customer, but big business doesn't say that. What they say is, you will be happy if you buy our product. You need me. Religion, they need you to pay their bills because God cannot manage his money very well. That's been historically true. So the church says that even though they know that the church needs the parisher, they tell the parisher, oh, the parisher, you need the church. Without our Jesus saving you, you're a lost sinner. So we've got the good stuff, and you do what we tell you to do, and we might give you some of the good stuff after you're dead. Same thing with the government. The politicians, they need your vote. They need you, but they're trying to convince you, oh, those people over there are really terrible, and you need me. You need to vote for me to save you from all of those old terrible people over there, including the blacks, yeah, the Mexicans, the American. But you know what it's like in Europe, because now it's the Islamics, and so you have all of this political turmoil because of the hatred that's being generated by the political class.
Yeah, making use of fear a lot. Sometimes
A
shake.
lot of fear. So this is what society does to people. And what we need to do as meditators is to turn all of that stuff upside down. You do not need them. You're self-sufficient already. You are, in fact, not a victim. You're a lion. And the Buddha was a lion. The Buddha was not a victim. He was a tough dude. He was big and strong and powerful and was of the position of a winner.
Yeah, that's
So
maybe.
we need to change our attitude right from the very beginning of being a victim, which we have been playing the victim's role all of this time, to become playing a winner. And when do we do that? Just at that point of mindfulness, when the mind wanders away from the breath, and then eventually later we can catch it. So at that point of never mind, then the start again has to be a winner's start again. It's not a loser's start again. It's a winner's start again.
Yeah.
You have to do it with a positive attitude, a can-do attitude, and that attitude is also a skill to be developed.
Yeah, I saw you say that before when I flicked through the YouTube videos, and I tried that in the last days, and it made such a huge difference. It was ridiculous almost. It's
Yes.
it's it kind of makes a difference between the meditation wearing you out and like enlivening you.
Exactly. In not only enlivening you, but making you feel light, buoyant, not heavy.
Right.
So in fact, just that act alone is enlightening.
Yeah.
you become enlightened very quickly. So there's no reason to talk about a hierarchy of people who have this, that, attainment and whatever like that. No, everything happens in the moment. So if you can lighten up in this moment, you're enlightened in this moment. Ha ha. If you can turn the light on in your mind, then turning that light on is enlightenment right here, right now, in this moment.
Yeah.
Everything has to do with this present moment.
Which
and what we have to do is get out of the past.
I don't know if we have time for that today. Like I have maximum 1.5 hours, and you, yeah,
We've
probably
already
have
taken it up.
others.
Okay. All right. Well, let's stop here. You've already had a bit of it, and call back soon, and we'll finish this off. But one of the things that I want to point is that we've already, in fact, talked about all four.
I meant I have a bit more time, but there was one more thing. Also, I'm concerned with that. That would be interesting. I don't know if you can still hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Um, because I feel like in the sometimes if I just go back to the present moment and I start again, I can't apply my thought to something. And in the mail I've sent you, I also mentioned that I'm thinking now, I'm thinking about moving from the Netherlands because my relationship is over and stuff, and I would like to try new things, but I actually feel like I would maybe spend some time on longer retreat or in a setting that promotes uh, developing unification, maybe you could call that. But there's also a lot of fear, I guess, and I don't know, is that the right thing for me right now? And it's really like a block in my head, which I keep coming back to this doubt.
Okay.
I don't know how that fits into this whole.
All right. Well, let's say this then. That may take quite a long conversation, and we should plan on perhaps doing that on the next time. But between now and then, the assignment would be every time you think about anything like that, because it's dealing with a past relationship and how you deal with that going into the future. That's all past future stuff. So whenever you recognize that you're thinking about it, and you also recognize that it brings up doubt, insecurities, and uncertainties, and you don't know what to do, you can recognize that as, oh, this is suffering. Thinking about that stuff is suffering in this moment.
Right.
And so when you see that, you can say, okay, Mr. Kowenka, never mind. Throw that stuff out and be joyful in the moment. Oh, I'm so glad that I caught myself doing that, because otherwise I would have just been in a bad mood. But now that I can see it, I can throw that stuff out and be satisfied that I can be here now. I can take a deep breath and have a little nibbana moment, have a bit of coolness, have a bit of relaxation, and in fact, have the little benefit of the right sati, the right attitude, and the right effort. That right attitude, I'm a winner, I can do this. That no matter how obstructed your mind gets about the old relationship or what you're going to do next, you can clean that stuff out long enough to take a deep breath and be here now and enjoy the moment. And you do that for a little bit, and then thoughts about the old girlfriend and the fight that you had with her, and you got this new idea, and boy, you're going to let her have this one. I know what I'm going to tell her next time. And then you realize, oh no, wait a minute, I don't have to think about any of that stuff now. I can throw that stuff out. Aha, I caught you. I caught you, old girlfriend. You came back in the back door. I saw you. And so we begin to develop success in the practice. We become joyful with it. We become successful in the practice, gives us the right attitude that we can do this. That I am not a victim to the mind. I'm not a victim of my girlfriend and the arguments that we had, and I'm not a victim to the suffering that the thoughts about her cause. I'm better than that. I can come out of that. I can throw that out of my mind, and I can come back to this present moment and enjoy myself.
Okay.
You keep practicing that, and that will develop the skill of sati, the skill of right effort, the skill of right attitude that needs to be developed over and over and over again. And with those three skills, then your right noble view will begin to grow and expand also.
What it doesn't do yet is provide me with an answer what to do.
You're not looking for an answer because you think that if you got an answer, then you'll feel good. Guess what? You probably won't. So let's go feel good directly.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan.
Yeah, you don't need the answer to that question, not now.
Yeah, it feels like some pressure to decide, I guess. But there's
you're
not
putting that pressure on yourself. So when you see pressure, you can say, aha, I caught you, Mr. Pressure. Out you go. I'm going to have a moment of peace and relaxation. And so you throw that stuff out of the mind. This is a skill that you need to develop. Otherwise, you'll be pressurizing yourself for one thing after another, just like you've been pressurizing yourself before. The reason that you're pressurizing yourself over this is because you're already in the habit of pressurizing yourself. You've done this many times. And then you'll do it this time, and then you'll get over it, and then more pressure will come later. This is a really excellent time to practice correctly, to stay out of those things that cause pressure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
It does, doesn't it? Once we put our mind, wow.
Oh man.
Oh
Yeah.
man, great, good. I like that. Okay, well, let's go ahead and end this call, and call me in a couple of 3 days or whatever's convenient for you, and then we'll start looking at that thing that we're not going to look at right now.
Great, sounds good. Should I send you the recording, or I don't know, even know on what way?
No, when after later it'll show up. If I need your help on it, I'll ask you. Other than that, it'll be online soon enough.
Yeah, great. All right, so thank you very much for today. This was great.
This has been delightful, Christian. I'm glad to see you.
Yes,
Good.
definitely.
Yeah,
So
come in my room. Have a ball. Come take a flight and come sit on my porch. Got lots of students here.
yeah, maybe in the future.
Someday. No pressure.
All right, so I wish you a good rest of the day.
Okay, we'll see you.
Good see
Okay,
you.
bye-bye.
Bye bye.